All right, hello. Welcome to Basic Folk, where we have authentic and honest conversations with under-the-radar folk musicians. It's Cindy House. I am not at my house right now, so I'm not in my little studio because there are people coming to view it because I'm trying to sell it, which is pretty exciting. I mean, it's sad because I love my house and I wish I could take it with me to Boston when I move, but hopefully we'll find somebody cool to live in that house because it's a great neighborhood. In fact, this week on Basic Folk, we are talking to one of my neighbors and one of my favorite musicians that I've met while I've been in Pittsburgh for the past 11 years. His name is Alex Stanton, and he's in the band Townspeople. You may recognize his name from me reading it at the end of Basic Folk because he does all of the little in-between, and he does the theme song music on the podcast. So excited to have him on. But before we get into it, let's take a moment to thank our sponsors. Basic Folk is supported by Lindsay Myers from LMNO Management. If you like the artists on Basic Folk, she thinks you'll also like the songwriting duo McDean at McDean Sings on Instagram or visit mcdean.co/basicfolk. So today we are going to be talking to Alex Stanton of the band Townspeople. They play pretty quirky, cute, whimsical indie folk, and Townspeople is spelt all lowercase, and people is actually PPL, but I'll put all this at my website, cindyhouse.net. We'll be talking to Alex about the sound he creates in Townspeople, as well as the band that he was in before Townspeople called 28 North, which have a very different sound than what he's making these days. Also, we will touch upon his music school that he runs in Pittsburgh. He runs a school called Sunburst School of Music, which employs a lot of great musicians in the Pittsburgh area that have come to form this really unique community. And something really cool about Alex is his mom, a very sweet, awesome lady named Catherine. She used to be in the art department at Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and worked really closely with Fred Rogers for many, many years. And so Alex basically grew up on the set of that TV show. And we talk about what effect that had on him, as well as the really fun story of his first Martin guitar he got, which is connected to his mom working in the art department at Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. But first, before we get to our conversation with Alex Stanton, let's take a listen to a song from the latest Townspeople album, Twigs. This is the title track. We'll listen to a clip of this tune and then get to our conversation with Alex on Basic Folk.
Outside, we counted gold times and lied. The hills were steeper then. We kicked our shoes off before going inside. The sticks we saw as guns. Trigger pull trigger and not inside. Oh, 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 I know you follow me and me. I seem to have lost my way. Way back when the water was broken, we knew how to be lost. At 10, they throw the...
Welcome to my professional podcast.
Testing.
Okay, we're good.
We're good.
Alex Stanton, thank you for coming to the basement.
Of course.
Walking down the street.
Thanks for having me.
You are really interested in building things, and that's kind of how you approach your music and your business and your instruments. You like to hand make instruments and have a very creative eye for that. You're a lifelong inventor. Where did that love of building and inventing come from?
It's really interesting. I think from both of my parents, it was early on that, we were just made to be creative in as many different ways as we could. One of my first memories as far as that goes is really wanting some WWF wrestling action figures that our friends down the street had and not being able to have them because, we had to make all of our toys or whatever. Not that it was
Wait,
the 1800s.
You had to make all toys?
No, we didn't have to make all toys, but they were sort of the fast food of toys, like really kind of plasticky things or like ones with guns and stuff. Mm-hmm. We couldn't get a ride to the toy store to buy them, so it was kind of, we had to make our own, so.
Wait,
So
what do you mean you couldn't get a ride to the toy store?
Well, my mom wouldn't have taken us to the toy store to buy them, and nobody else would either.
But you had the means. You just didn't have transportation.
I would have saved my allowance to buy them for sure. So it's not like I wanted to make my own action figures, but just forced to be resourceful, I guess. But yeah, so we were always making things. My dad had a wood shop and was really active in there a lot, and from an early age had us around power tools and various construction projects, or making, helping us make toys and stuff in the garage. So
what's your favorite power tool?
My favorite power tool? Ooh. My dad would be proud if I said the radial arm saw.
Ah, yes.
It's just really versatile. It's really quick and easy, pretty safe, cuts stuff at fun angles. Radial arm saw.
Radial arm saw.
My mom's two parents were a piano player and her dad a guitar player, but they were secretive about it. My grandmother, I guess, played the piano when no one was around, and it was like they were teenagers when they walked in and heard her playing the first time and had no idea.
Whoa.
And then my grandfather, I was told, played the guitar all the time, and I asked him one time, like, do you still play? And he's like, no, I burned it like 25 years ago.
What?
Yeah.
Did you ask any more questions about that?
We haven't talked about it that much. Music, so in our immediate family, though, my parents are two of the least musical people that I've met to this day. They like listening to music and like listened to CDs and stuff around the house. But like as far as singing or making music goes, it was just not a thing for either one of them in any way. It just wasn't a part of my early childhood, I guess, really at all, until we had a nice piano teacher lady move in across the street. And
this was in Pittsburgh?
In Pittsburgh.
In Highland Park.
In Highland Park, yes. We were, I want to say like 7 or 8, but I might have that wrong. And expected to take piano lessons from her because she was right there. And we got a piano, so you have to. And we did for a little bit, and it wasn't something I really took to at first. I liked her. She was fine. And playing the piano was okay. I wasn't, like, very good at it. And then my sister, who's a couple years older than me, she's like, she was just, like, sort of an intense kid. She was always one step ahead of me negotiating with our parents for things. So she negotiated quitting piano lessons. And I remember finding out, like, oh, wait, we could quit piano lessons? Like, definitely doing that. Like, yeah, so I only had, like, a little bit of piano before giving it up. And then I tried again in 5th grade to play the saxophone because it looked cool. And we were supposed to pick an instrument then. It was like, everyone's doing it. Mm. And
like a mandatory thing?
I think it was, I don't know if it was totally mandatory with the school, but our parents wanted us to. And all the other kids were doing it. So it was like, pick one of these instruments. And the drum kit was like, looked really cool. But they sort of told us, like, everyone's going to pick the drum kit. If you pick the drum kit, like, you'll never get to play it because it's going to be taken all the time.
So you chose the
I chose the saxophone.
Most
it was the
popular.
second coolest looking one. Mm-hmm. Then that only lasted a couple months too. So I didn't actually start playing music until high school, and I picked up the guitar. One other thing to add about this, though, is that I was thinking about this recently. Like, even though I didn't really play music, I was a really big music listener. In starting around 5th grade, so I guess I was 10, and we got our first batch of CDs from the Farmore or whatever, the NRM.
Oh, like that, was it the mail, the catalog?
No,
thing?
just the record store. I mean, I did
Oh.
that several times also, but that was like later on.
The greatest scam of the 20th century.
Yeah, 10 CDs for the price of like 1/10 of one, and then we'll charge you $100 a month and send you one CD until your parents call and get you out of it somehow.
Did that really happen to you?
I don't think it was $100, but yeah, several times. Because then
You have to read the fine print, Alex.
well, you get the 17 CDs, and then they send you a couple more, and your parents get mad because they're getting charged every month. So you cancel it. But then a couple years later, it sounds like a good idea again. Because there's like 17 more CDs you want. And there's maybe like another company that runs the same thing. So
Very strong marketing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but you, in 5th grade, you became a music fan.
Yeah, I became, I would listen
Like
to
a serious fan.
music, while I made my Legos and stuff, just constantly, like, and listen to my same favorite CDs again and again, and tape things off the radio and that kind of stuff.
Cool. What were the favorite CDs?
The Presidents of the United States of America, which is really great kids music. That guy actually makes kids music now, which is really funny to me. Because it wasn't kids music. There was like F-bombs and stuff all over it. But Green Day, Dookie, The Weezer, Blue Album, Counting Crows, August and Everything After.
These all make so much sense to me.
Please Hammer, Don't Hurt 'Em.
Oh, and there it is. So I also read that Paul Simon Graceland.
Yeah,
was a
that
big influence.
was a big one of my parents that was played a lot. It was like they had like 2 CDs that they would ever listen to, and just listen to the same thing over and over again. And that was the one that we liked, my sister and I. The other one was like Mary Chapin Carpenter or something.
Oh yeah,
I mean, she might be fine, but
it's called "Come On, Come On" or something.
Yeah. I'm into country music now, but back then it was like my sister and I just had this thing that was like the good CD my parents listened to and the bad CD our parents listened to. It's like,
Right.
That was the bad one. So the second it came on, we were like, no. Like,
So I've made you tell this story in a couple of other interviews, but I love it so much. Can you tell the story of your first Martin guitar?
yeah. So this is a long form interview, so I can tell you like a little more about it.
Take your
I guess, if you
time.
want. So in high school, 9th grade, well, my mom had been a part of the art department for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for...
Specifically, was she like a set designer?
well, so the art department was a cross-functional team,
Like
I
a
suppose.
catch-all.
Yeah, they did all kinds of things. They sewed the costumes for the puppets and painted the floor, painted all the sets. And they would be asked to make different, props. Like, we were just watching an episode the other day because my sister's kids are really into it, with these, like, propeller hats that they wear to fly around the neighborhood and make believe. My mom walked by the TV and she was like, oh, I made that hat.
It would be so fun to watch Mr. Rogers with your mom. It would be like pop-up video.
Yeah, right. But I don't think she really watched it that much. She's just never been a TV person. And it's maybe like, if I finish an album, I can never listen to it again,
Right,
kind of thing.
same kind of thing.
Anyway, we were around the set a lot as kids. We would walk there after school, which was fun too. But the guitars came when they were doing a show where they had a music shop. Joe Negri is a famous jazz guitar player from Pittsburgh. He was part of the show in the Joe Negri's music shop segment where Fred was going to go there and learn about guitars and stuff. And so them being a nonprofit, the company that produced the show, they just asked different music stores and things for donations of instruments. Mm-hmm. Like they asked Martin, they asked Ovation, I think, donated a bunch of instruments. And, they put them in the set. And then when they were done, they sold them to the cast and the crew for, a deep discount. They had been donated, so the money was going to Family Communications, the company that made...
Public television,
exactly. There was actually 2 that we got because they ran this segment a couple times that year. And the first one was this Ovation guitar, which, if anyone out there is familiar with Ovation guitars, but they have this molded plastic back.
Melissa Etheridge.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it was like the guitar of the future, 20 years ago or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
And this was like a small one, and it was like, it was pretty ugly. It was really, in retrospect, it was really hard to play. And it actually, I was like, okay, I'll take that. I think that one she got for free, actually. And I was like, sure, guitar, that sounds cool. I like music with guitars in it. And it sat there for a couple months, and then I tried just like one day, picked it up and went on the family computer and looked up a guitar tab for a Green Day song and played it on one string. I did that a couple times with a couple of other songs like that, and then a few months later they were running the show again, and that was when the Martin became a possibility, and my mom talked to me about it. She was like, well, we have the chance to get this Martin. I'd never heard of it. It's like, these are really nice guitars. We could do that, but you have to take lessons. And I'd just been kind of playing around in the room by myself, and I was like, okay, that sounds like a deal. And also at the same time, I had some friends of mine in high school who were like, we were listening to a lot of Blink-182, and they were like, we want to start a band in the mold of Blink-182. And we don't play instruments either, so you could be in it. You'd be on the same, we just all got these guitars and drums for Christmas, so you could be in on the ground floor, basically.
A startup.
Exactly, yeah. I was eager to take them up on that.
How long did your mom work for Mr. Rogers?
It was from the early 90s until the show ended in...
Long time.
2000, 2001, something like that.
It's so... I want to hear more about the effect that being, like, just basically, like, growing up on the set of Mr. Rogers had on you.
I got to see behind all of the things, like the castle and the tree and stuff, and go inside. And they were not what I expected, I think, on the inside. Like, if you've ever been on any kind of a set, it's like, oh, wow, this is not real. Like, this is a set. Everything is just kind of lashed together as inexpensively and quickly as it can be in order to make this one side appear.
I guess, like, I'm interested in also knowing about, like, the emotional effect of, like, knowing Fred Rogers in person, and, like, how did that, I don't know if that had any kind of impact on you.
Yeah, I mean, well, so because she started working there when we were relatively young, we didn't, like, have this period of having him be this celebrity before meeting him. It was like we met him kind of early on, too. So it was something we were kind of proud of to our, peers in a way that's, like, just kind of silly. Like, oh, we know Fred Rogers, The guy was just exactly the same as he was on the show, off the show. It was just, like, who he was. He was really kind and really would just sort of sit down and talk to you like he was talking to the camera in the same way, explain stuff that we were seeing on the set and that kind of thing. And I guess it just felt like normal life.
You were on the show?
I'm in a doctor's office episode. I'm kid 2 in the waiting room or whatever.
Did you get royalties for that?
No.
You went to the University of Vermont?
I did, yes. For 2 years. I didn't graduate.
Was it for music?
It was not. It was in the engineering school.
Oh, okay. Do you have a degree in engineering?
No. I went to University of Vermont to study engineering. I was also really interested in music at the time, playing guitar. In those kind of 2 years, I realized that I was much more interested in playing the guitar than I was in... I mean, I was interested in the school part, and I was doing well. I think what happened is that some of my other friends went to music school in Pittsburgh at Duquesne, and they came up to visit me, see a show from my band, and we hung out one night. They'd driven a long way, so it was like very exciting when people from Pittsburgh came to visit you. It's 12 hours or whatever.
Oh my God.
We had a lot of fun, and we talked for a long time. They talked me into dropping out of school to join their band.
Wow. Which was at 28 North?
Yes, 28 North, right. And it was like it was sort of a pivotal moment in my life, and just dropping out of school obviously was big, and it was a surprise to a lot of the people around me because I had good grades and seemed like a sensible person. When I told my parents about it, they were actually really supportive in a way that, like, they were like, okay, well, you know, at least you sound like you know what you want to do, which is, you know, more than could say about a lot of kids that are continuing with college, you know, or you're not like failing out and fumbling along with your life. You've got something in mind and you want to go for it, and, you know, you should do that, and you can go back to school at some point if you want to. And I think I was also of the mind that I'm like, well, I'm going to take a semester off and do this, and then I'm going to go back to school.
But you eventually went to the University of Pittsburgh.
I had kind of spent the year playing music, living in a house with these guys, and like they were all music students at Duquesne. And it was actually like a lot of my music education came from that year and the next couple of years of living with these other people who were really dedicated musicians and getting some of the schooling. Like, I was like, I like music. It's my favorite thing in the world. And you have to go to college, so I'm going to go to music college instead of engineering school, and I'll just do it at Pitt so I can keep doing my band thing. And I did that for one semester.
So I found this quote about how you started Townspeople, which is your current project, to the effect of, I was trying to do something that felt pleasurable to sing. I had been forcing myself with rock songs that weren't right for me to sing. What kind of music were you making before Townspeople, and why didn't it feel right?
Well, that's interesting. So, like I said, my parents weren't really singers. I was not really a singer either until I started playing with 28 North. I was, you know, like a lead guitar player and playing solos, and like that was kind of my thing, and we were playing rock music. I started singing background vocals because we were all music nerds, and trying to make harmonies was like, sounded like a good idea. I would like be playing guitar. We were really loud at a bar or something, and I would be like trying to remember my note that I was supposed to come in on the singing, and I would have to like bend down near my amplifier and like play that note on my guitar and like try to get it in my head, and then I would try to sing it and it would come out wrong anyway. I think I had like a really tough time starting as a singer. So I started taking some singing lessons, but I was also like really involved in the songwriting of that band from the beginning, and it was something that we like all thought was really important. So like everybody was writing songs, and we were like trying to amass as many songs as we possibly could have. It was like a point of pride for us, or like a thing to tell my parents of like, you know, I'm not going to college, but like my band has 100 songs. You know what I mean? It was like
Same difference.
Originally, I was writing songs for other people to sing. There was two other guys that sang lead vocals, and I would kind of, you know, write my song and show it to them, and we would talk about which one of them should sing it. And then over time, eventually, they kind of convinced me, like, oh, you should try singing this one. Or like, you know, maybe I wrote one that like neither of them liked, and they're like, why don't you sing this one?
Isn't that what happened to in Faces, that Ooh La La song? Rod Stewart didn't want to sing it, so that like
that
Ronnie
true?
Wood, he's like, you sing this,
Yeah.
and it's like the best Faces song.
And it is the best Faces song. I didn't know that.
Fun fact.
Yeah, like I was taking singing lessons. I had a great teacher. I took them for a long time. They were actually like a really important part of my life also, because when I became a music teacher later, those experiences in the singing lessons were some of my most valuable material to draw on for how to work with other people trying to learn music.
What really worked for you in those lessons?
Singing lessons are really personal, right? You're very like exposed when you're trying to work on your voice in a way that like with guitar isn't necessarily the case. Or maybe I was just like naturally had an easier time with guitar, so in my lessons I didn't feel as like I was putting myself out there the same way. I had a teacher that was really, really good at making it sort of calm and conversational, and like, you know, you can relax and do this. Because, you know, the other thing is about singing is that like if you're tense or whatever in different parts of your body, it like has an actual effect on the way that your voice sounds or whatever. You know, being able to do it calmly in front of another person was like a real first hurdle for me. And the way in which she did that by just like the flow of the lesson and like just our week to week conversations and like relationship was very helpful. It was very effective of getting me to calm down and relax my shoulders and like, you know, sing a little better each time, you know?
Yeah.
But I was still like, to kind of get back to your original point, you know, we were trying to make some like high octane rock music. I was trying to sing high and hard, and like, you know, the other two guys were able to sing with like a sort of raspy, screamy quality that like I really love, you know, in a lot of singers, but like I just never was able to quite get that. I would picture Chris Cornell in my mind.
You're a very visual person.
Yeah. I would open my mouth and it just never quite sounded like that. My way of trying to produce those sounds was to like push really hard, which I mean, I kind of knew wasn't exactly the right way to do it anyway. But so when I started singing the Townspeople songs or like writing on the songs that became the first Townspeople album, it was like all of a sudden I was like, okay, well, I don't have to push anymore. I don't have to try to sing this high A anymore or whatever. I can just like try to find notes that feel good. The singing I was doing with 28 North, I would lose my voice every night. We would play a gig. I would wake up the next morning and like totally hoarse, like I couldn't even talk. You know, in part it was because I was just like pushing everything really hard to try to be like aggressive. I don't know, that just didn't really suit me in the end.
It sounds like this journey of trying to find out who you are as a musician is a really important one for you, and one that you then take and apply into the philosophy of Sunburst, where you say about Sunburst, your music school, is that you want to help people figure out what kind of musician they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I think I became a music teacher 9 years ago or so now, and you know, it was kind of right around the same time that I was sort of figuring this stuff out with my own singing and music, about doing stuff that felt like right for me for whatever reason. And when I started teaching guitar, it just sort of felt obvious to me. And, you know, sitting down with somebody, you know, my first question is always like, well, like, what kind of music do you like? You know, making no assumptions that like what I like has anything to do with what they like. And also, I have always been sort of all over the place as a music listener. And with 28 North too, we played all kinds of, you know, we would try a reggae song and try a country song, and maybe to a fault, like we had to have 100 songs, right? So they can't be 100 rock songs. And I think with teaching, it makes you be even more versatile because, you know, you don't even get to draw the line on pop country like you want to or whatever. Like somebody will come in like, you know, I want to play like this Florida Georgia Line song, and you're like, all right, let's listen to it. You know, there's got to be something in there for me.
Meet them where they are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's interesting to know that you were writing songs for 28 North for other people. How did your writing change when you started writing for Townspeople?
So my writing would be, like when I was writing for other people to sing, I would use this little, like kind of a falsetto voice in the bedroom by myself, where...
Do you want to give us a little demonstration?
Yeah, I mean, it's like... Yeah, we're going down. You know, like, that was like a rock song. You
really
can take
good.
that if you want.
No,
yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
I'm going to make my own MP3 of it. Put it on my iPad.
Ringtone, yeah.
Yeah.
So then sometimes we would change the key of the song for somebody else, but sometimes we would just leave it because they could sort of sing with the full voice up there. And I had to stop doing that when I started writing more songs for me to sing, because I would write them with this like head voice, and then when I tried to sing them out loud, it would be like, oh, I either have to change the key of it, like move the whole thing down, which would change how the instrumentation works, and, just all kinds of other things about the whole song would shift in a way that sometimes didn't work for it. I started trying to write my songs out loud, as in like singing them where they were eventually going to be sung in kind of my like...
That sounds scary.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially like if other people are around,
Yeah.
I often have always started songs with kind of nonsensical mouth sounds, not with words, but with like, and also not with just like a humming sound, but with some kind of vocal articulation that's just alien language or whatever. Just because it has felt like a way to try to dig around for words or dig around for sounds that want to become certain words. Sometimes just like a certain vowel or syllable just like feels right on a note, and then you'll kind of like puzzle pieces just kind of play around with different words that use that vowel until you land on one that kind of makes sense, and then put two of them together, and then...
I really feel like I'm inside your head right now. It's wild.
Yeah.
So what about lyrically, in looking up a bunch of stuff about you and Townspeople, the thing that kept coming up about your writing was dystopian or near future dystopian worlds, like love songs in a dystopian world.
Yeah.
What is up with that?
Okay, so, well, a couple things. I'm a big science fiction fan. I also, oftentimes, instead of having a concept like a song about my father or whatever, I tend to write... Well, so once I get the ball rolling on a song, as far as like having a basic feel, a couple of words maybe, I tend to like get images in my mind instead of words, or maybe in addition to the words. I kind of like write from a picture. I sort of maybe have a couple of words that make me picture something, and then I try to picture it even more, like a situation or a scene or something, and then try to like flesh it out with words, or
That's really cool.
or like write around the, like sort of write off of it. Like I'm picturing that, and it's making me write these words that won't be describing that picture in any way, but it's just like my source material kind of.
I want to know about your kitchen-y folk pop trinkets. You make instruments out of household
the
materials?
Trinkets, no, the trinkets are the songs. But I mean, I do like to try to make instruments out of things lying around, or improvise sounds, by experimenting with different things to hit together, or different ways to play an instrument, putting things in the guitar or hitting the piano with something that you wouldn't have thought to or whatever. One of my ideas with the Townspeople record, at least the Twigs, the most recent one, was these really short, cute songs. I kind of pictured them like little trinkets on your desk.
Oh.
And they're all just sort of a verse and a chorus, and they're like a couple minutes long. Each one has a similar sonic palette of like instruments that I used, but has like its own sound that makes it a special one. So they're kind of like trying to make them into little collector's items, like that kind of it's just the sort of thing I like to picture while I'm working on music for some
That's
reason.
really cool. There is this like earnestness, this like super cutesy element to your songs, which I think is a super fine line to walk, where something can be whimsical, but then it like crosses the line and becomes super lame. However, like Townspeople has this like something in there that makes it work and makes it cool. I would say maybe it's probably because of the MC Hammer CD. But what do you think it is about?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that line? And
Yeah, I'm keenly aware of that line in other people's work. Like as a critic, like if we're listening to John Mayer songs, they'll just be like, one John Mayer song that I like, oh, like that one's pretty good. And then this other one, I'm like, no, that's way across that line. And who would ever listen to that? It's
Right.
lame is like the right word to describe like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I, as far as my own songs go, like, I think it's probably harder for me to tell when that's happening. I tend to approach writing an album by trying, sort of my same thing from 28 North is just trying to get as many songs, as many ideas on the table as I can, and then pick the best ones. It's easiest for me to see that kind of thing in comparison to other songs, but also, I depend on like Jake Hanner, who I've worked with for these, and my wife Danielle to tell me when
she's so much cooler than you.
tell me when I'm being lame.
And she will not hesitate.
No, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, and I mean, I do spend a lot of the time I'm working on my music alone, but like there are points in the process where it's like, all right, I need to try this out on somebody, and I'll just kind of like send it to Jake or sit down with him, or I have other friends that I'll trust to do this kind of work with them, where I basically sit down with them, put on the recording of a song, and then stare at them and just study their reaction.
And you're open to their suggestions and their feedback. You don't just want to hear like, oh, that was great.
Well, I mean, yeah, I definitely want to hear that was great. But like, I also, it's one of those things where like, I know I need to hear their feedback, and I don't always take their suggestions, which is almost kind of like I get more out of it by the way that I feel while I'm watching them listen to it than what they say when they're done with it.
Visual person.
Well, and not even like them, but like me. Like, I'll try something that could be really charming or could be really lame. And then I will have a captive audience. I'll be driving somewhere with my wife, and I will be like, do you want to listen to this song I've been working on? It's voice memo on my phone. And she'll be like, of course. And I put it on, and within like 2 seconds, I know, just based on like, is my like blood pressure going up? You're like, I'll know right away if it works or not,
Wow. That's great. So Jake Hanner, I meant to ask you a question about your collaboration with him. You've worked with him on both of Townspeople's albums, and also you're an adjunct member of Jake's band, the indie pop band Denora, which is a Pittsburgh band. Maybe you could just talk about what clicks with the two of you and why you continue to work with him.
It's hard to say. I mean, I really like Jake as a person. I think he's got a really great ear for music. I sought him out to work with when I started working on the first Townspeople album because of his band Denora, who I'd been aware of for a long time, and kind of the sound that they were going for was like a little bit of a similar thing in walking that line that we've been talking about. Mm-hmm. He's one of the people that I can work with in a room together, and we can be honest with each other, and we can and I can sing without tensing my shoulders or whatever, and that's not everybody for me. That's I have a hard time with that sometimes. So with playing with Denora, I guess with Townspeople, because I play most of the instruments, I end up being kind of my own sideman, but I love the role of not being the center of attention sometimes, and playing part, being a sort of part player, or
it's a little bit more relaxing,
musical, yeah. I mean, it's more relaxing, but it's also just it's fun for me to as a guitar player to just play the same two notes back and forth for the whole song, and just be this one tiny little part of the bigger picture without needing to play a part that stands on its own or takes over the song or whatever. And that's kind of the number one requirement for being in Denora, because it's all of the parts are like that.
Yeah. Your music, like your personality, has a pretty gentle disposition. And something I've observed just being in Pittsburgh for the last, decade plus is that the bands that do really well here are kind of like aggressive throwdown party bands, kind of like the opposite of Denora and Townspeople. Also, we're living in a really like macho world where bullies usually are coming out on top these days. Do you feel like you're up against it sometimes with that kind of mentality? And what can you say about having a gentle demeanor in the world that we live in, both like musically and personally?
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier, I would do more aggressive music. I just can't sing. I just can't sing it. No, but like for me, I don't really think about it like that. I just try to be nice to people, and like I was saying with the music, I try to make music that feels good to me, and feeling good is usually like something positive, and I end up with positive music. And I mean, I know that there's like a real way to get darker feelings out through music, and I definitely have that in me too, and have written, or maybe it's just me sitting there playing by myself and kind of gotten to that kind of thing, but it hasn't been on a Townspeople record, I guess. But like I think just being nice is really important, both in music and in life and in everything. And it's not like automatic. You have to try sometimes, especially in this day and age. As far as the question of like all the music being really aggressive or throw down party bands, as you say, I have sort of a separate theory about that, because a lot of those people are really kind and gentle too when you sit down and talk to them. A lot of like metal musicians are like the teddy bears, so
we're not talking about metal though, we're talking about like rock and roll bands.
Yeah, but so one of my theories about that, as far as maybe it's just as far as Pittsburgh goes, but like there's sort of a challenge for making Townspeople work in the live setting, and it's one of the reasons why I tend to prefer to have like a 10-person band. I mean, just playing with 10 people is really fun, and getting all the background vocals is really important to me. But like, so a lot of the venues where people go to see music are also bars, and you have to kind of compete with people talking who haven't seen each other in a while, or that are like, ordering their drinks, and like they're drinking, they're hanging out. There aren't a lot of like listening room type places in Pittsburgh. There are a few, but even those ones are kind of bars too. So, I think if the main outlet for live music is going to be a place where you have to be loud to really compete and be heard, then you're going to have a lot of loud bands. And if we had a bunch of like Joe's Pub kind of like acoustic music room places here, we might have a lot more delicate music being showcased. I mean, and we have plenty, but it's just like, it's harder to find venues, and even still it's harder to like kind of make the sound work in the room where you have people paying attention and you have people getting what you're going for. And I find if I have 10 people on stage, even though we're playing delicate music, it gets bigger and it like demands more attention kind of, and it can work in a venue that's a bar. Whereas like if it's just me solo or me with one or two other people, it really has to be, in a radio studio practically, or else it's just lost,
A library.
Yeah, exactly, a library.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been awesome.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. See you in the neighborhood, because we're neighbors.
We are neighbors. I will.
Okay, that's it for Basic Folk. Alex Stanton, a wonderful musician in the Pittsburgh area that I have come to know and love over my years here in Pittsburgh. He's one of the greatest, and really great neighbor as well. You can check out his music online at his website and on Spotify. Unfortunately, Alex doesn't tour too much, but there are some videos of the band performing live so you can see that like 10-person incarnation of townspeople. Thanks a lot for listening to Basic Folk. You can find out more information about the podcast at cindyhouse.net. Also want to take a moment to quickly thank our sponsors. So Basic Folk is brought to you in part by Lindsay Myers at LMNO Management. If you love traditional roots music, she wants you to check out Tina and Her Pony's album Champion at tinaandherpony.com or wherever you listen to music. And also want to say thank you to WIUP-FM in Indiana University of Pennsylvania. They are going to be airing Basic Folk Saturdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you are in the area in Indiana, PA, you can listen on 90.1 WIUP, or you can listen online at WIUPFM.org. Thanks to them. And thank you to Alex again for being on the podcast and for doing our music here on Basic Folk. He makes all those instrumental interludes. Thanks to Laura McCarthy for her support on the podcast. And of course, thank you for listening to Basic Folk. See you next week. Bye.